My name is Ren Arclight, and the first legendary weapon I ever owned was a rusty kitchen knife with a bent tip. That sounds pathetic, because it was pathetic. I was 8 years old, standing in my father's blacksmith shop, holding the knife while a glowing blue window floated in front of my face. It said, "Weapon recorded." Then another line appeared. Rusty kitchen knife. Condition: terrible. Sharpness: questionable. Emotional value: somehow high. I stared at the words for 10 whole seconds before doing what any intelligent child would do. I screamed. My father ran into the room carrying a hammer. My mother ran in carrying a broom. I panicked, dropped the knife, and somehow summoned another knife into my empty hand. Now there were 2 identical rusty kitchen knives. My father looked at the knife on the floor. Then he looked at the knife in my hand. Then he looked at me. Then he slowly put down his hammer and said, "Ren, we are going to pretend this is normal until your mother stops screaming." That was how I discovered my ability. Every person in the kingdom awakened a blessing around the age of 8. Some people gained fire magic. Some became stronger with swords. Some could speak to animals. One unlucky boy in my village gained perfect knowledge of potato quality. Everyone laughed at him until he became the richest potato merchant in 3 provinces. My blessing looked simple. Anything the system recognized as a weapon could be recorded by touch. Once recorded, I could summon a copy. The copy was not an illusion. It was solid. It had the same weight, shape, sharpness, and magical properties as the original at the moment I touched it. If the copy broke, vanished, melted, exploded, or got swallowed by a monster, I could summon another one. At first, I thought that was the entire ability. Touch weapon. Get weapon. Very useful. Very boring. Then I touched my father's hammer. Blacksmith hammer recorded. I tried summoning it. It appeared. Then I wondered what would happen if I summoned another before dismissing the first one. A second hammer dropped onto my foot. I yelled. My father laughed. I got angry and summoned a third. Then a fourth. Then a fifth. My father stopped laughing when 37 hammers filled the workshop. That was the day we discovered there was no obvious limit. My mana did not decrease. My head did not hurt. The copies did not disappear. I could just keep making them. My mother walked into the workshop, looked at the mountain of identical hammers, and said, "Ren, if you can do this with gold, I will forgive everything." Unfortunately, gold coins were not weapons. We tested that. We tested a lot of things. Swords counted, spears counted, bows counted, axes counted, shields counted, which confused me because shields were supposed to stop weapons. But the system apparently respected shield bashing. A shovel counted after my father swung one at a thief. A chair counted after my mother broke one over my father's back for suggesting we test whether I could record furniture. The chair only became recordable after she used it. That was important. My ability did not care what an object was made for. It cared whether the world believed it could be used as a weapon. So naturally, I spent the next several years turning my childhood into a very dangerous science experiment. I touched every weapon in my father's shop. I touched farmer's sickles. I touched hunting bows. I touched a guard captain's spear after offering him 2 meat pies. I touched an old mercenary's sword after he fell asleep in a tavern. I touched a brick that had been involved in 7 bar fights. That brick was recorded as Red Fang Tavern's veteran brick. It had a special effect. When thrown inside a tavern, accuracy increased by 30%. I have no idea who made the rules of my blessing, but I already liked them. By the time I was 12, my hidden inventory held more than 400 weapons. Most were garbage. I could summon 10 rusty axes, 50 chipped knives, 100 hunting arrows, 30 frying pans, and 1 extremely angry-looking garden rake. I thought I was powerful. Then I entered the Royal Academy. That was when I learned the difference between having 400 weapons and having 1 weapon that could split a castle gate. The academy was where nobles sent their children to become knights, mages, commanders, and professional disappointments. On the first day, every student had to demonstrate their blessing. A boy named Cassian Vale made a lion-shaped flame circle around his body. A girl named Mira Solwyn summoned a silver wolf made of moonlight. A prince named Leonhardt lifted a 700-kilogram training pillar with 1 hand. Then it was my turn. I walked into the arena. The instructor asked, "What is your blessing?" I said, "I can summon things I touched." He looked interested. I summoned a kitchen knife. He looked less interested. I summoned another kitchen knife. He looked concerned. I summoned 30. He looked tired. Cassian laughed so hard he fell off his bench. Someone called me the cutlery mage. That name followed me for 3 years. I hated it. But the academy had something my village never had. An armory. A very large armory. On my second night, I could not sleep because one thought kept bouncing around my skull. There were 6,000 weapons under the Eastern Training Hall. 6,000. I tried to be responsible. I truly did. I lasted until 2 in the morning. Then I climbed out of my window. The armory door was protected by a magical lock, 3 warning seals, and an elderly guard named Bram. The magical lock took me 20 minutes. The warning seals took 10. Bram took 1 cup of warm milk. He fell asleep instantly. I slipped inside and almost cried. Rows of swords. spears, axes, crossbows, halberds, war hammers, chain blades, throwing knives, knight shields, magic staffs designed for close combat, training relics, ceremonial weapons, old weapons retired from famous wars. I touched everything. I touched weapons until sunrise. My hands cramped. My back hurt. I accidentally hugged a suit of armor because I was too tired to tell what I was touching. The system recorded the armor's gauntlets as acceptable punching weapons. Good enough. By breakfast, my hidden inventory contained 6,843 entries. Unfortunately, I had also left fingerprints on almost every weapon in the academy. The instructors thought someone had broken into the armory to lick the equipment. I never corrected them. 3 months later, the annual combat tournament began. Cassian was still calling me Cutlery Mage. He had beaten 12 students without taking a single hit. When our names appeared together on the bracket, he grinned. Try not to bring a spoon. I smiled. I haven't recorded one yet. He thought I was joking. The match started. Cassian launched a lion made of fire at me. I summoned a shield. The lion smashed into it. The shield exploded. Cassian laughed. So I summoned another shield. Then 10 more. Then 50. I stacked them into a wall. His second attack blew through the first 20. His third attack broke another 15. He started looking worried. I kept summoning. He increased his fire. I increased my shields. Soon, I was standing behind a fortress made of academy equipment. The instructor shouted that this was not a construction contest. Cassian jumped over the wall. That was exactly what I wanted. I summoned 60 wooden practice swords in the air above him, not pointed downward. That would have killed him. I summoned them sideways. He crashed into them like a man jumping into a badly organized closet. Then I summoned 20 padded training hammers. The audience went silent. Cassian looked up. I dropped them. When the dust cleared, only his boots were visible. The instructor declared me the winner. That was the moment people stopped calling me Cutlery Mage. They started calling me Warehouse. I hated that too. After the tournament, Instructor Celine found me. She was the Academy's weapon historian. And more importantly, she carried a sword called Silver Mercy. Silver Mercy was a rare enchanted blade forged with moon steel. It could cut through magic barriers. It was worth more than my entire village. I had been staring at it for 6 months. Celine noticed. You want to touch my sword? I nearly choked. She narrowed her eyes. Your blessing records weapons, doesn't it? I froze. She knew. Then she held Silver Mercy toward me. Go ahead. I touched the blade. The blue window appeared. Silver Mercy recorded. A second line flashed. Unique enchantment copied. That had never appeared before. Celine stepped back. Summon it. I did. A perfect copy of Silver Mercy appeared in my hand. The real sword was still in hers. For the first time, my joke blessing stopped feeling like a joke. She swung her sword. I blocked with mine. The two blades rang with the exact same magical tone. Celine's expression changed. Ren, do you understand what you have? I said, 2 swords? She smacked me. Then she explained why my blessing was terrifying. Powerful weapons were rare because powerful materials were rare. Dragon bone, moon steel, star iron, divine crystal. Some legendary swords took kingdoms decades to forge. But I did not need materials. I only needed contact. If I touched 1 dragonbone sword, I could make 10. If I touched 1 enchanted spear, I could make 1,000. If I touched a national treasure, I could theoretically arm an entire country with copies. Then Selene said the sentence that completely changed my life. Whatever you do, do not let the royal treasury know what your ability can really do. Naturally, 2 weeks later, I got a job inside the royal treasury. It was not my fault. Celine made the mistake of telling me there were legendary weapons inside. Once I knew that, my brain stopped functioning correctly. The royal treasury opened its public exhibition once every 5 years. They hired students as guides, cleaners, scribes, and assistants. I applied to polish display cases. I was rejected. I applied to carry boxes. Rejected. I applied as a junior historical assistant. Rejected. Finally, I applied to clean toilets. Accepted. That is how the future terror of the battlefield entered the kingdom's most secure artifact exhibition, holding a mop. My assignment lasted 10 days. The first 6 were torture. I could see legendary weapons through glass barriers. The Crimson Emperor's spear, the Dragon King cleaver, Saint Aurelia's sunblade, the bow of falling stars, the Thunder Saint's hammer, a cursed dagger called Widow's Kiss, a black shield named World Anchor. I was close enough to smell the oil on them, but I could not touch anything. Every display had alarms. Every hallway had knights. Every relic had magic seals. So I behaved. For 6 whole days. On the 7th day, a noble child threw up on the exhibition floor. While everyone panicked, I learned something important. The cleaning staff had emergency access keys. I cleaned the floor. I cleaned the glass. I cleaned the stands. Then I cleaned the weapons. Very carefully, 1 finger at a time. The system nearly had a heart attack. Crimson Emperor's spear recorded. Dragon King cleaver recorded. Saint Aurelia's sunblade recorded. Bow of Falling Stars recorded. Thunder Saint's Hammer recorded. Widow's Kiss recorded. World Anchor recorded. Then I reached the final display. It contained a small golden object shaped like a letter opener. The plaque said it was called Dawn Needle. According to legend, the first king used it to kill a demon emperor. It looked like something used to open expensive mail. I touched it. The entire treasury shook. Every torch went out. A voice whispered inside my skull. Compatible bearer detected. I yanked my hand away. The display case cracked. I smiled nervously at the nearest guard. He stared at me. I stared at him. Then the noble child threw up again. The guard turned around. That child saved my life. I finished my shift and ran back to the academy. That night, I summoned copies of the relics inside an abandoned training chamber. The sunblade filled the room with daylight. The thunder hammer shattered the floor. The bow of falling stars created an arrow made of condensed light. World Anchor made gravity around my feet so strong that I sank knee-deep into stone. Widow's Kiss whispered the names of people who wanted me dead. The list was already longer than I expected. Then I summoned Dawn Needle. Nothing happened. It was just a tiny golden blade. I flicked it at a training dummy. The dummy split in half. So did the wall behind it. So did the empty classroom behind the wall. So did a statue in the courtyard. So did a tower half a kilometer away. I immediately dismissed it. A bell rang across the academy. Students ran outside. Instructors shouted. I stood beside the ruined wall, holding a broom. Apparently, whenever I was afraid, my survival instinct told me to look like cleaning staff. Nobody questioned me. That was another lesson. A good disguise does not need to be convincing. It only needs to make people too tired to ask questions. After graduation, most nobles joined night orders. I became an adventurer because adventurers could legally enter dungeons, monster nests, ancient ruins, battlefield graveyards, and suspicious holes in the ground. In other words, adventuring gave me permission to touch dangerous things. I started at copper rank. People laughed when they saw I carried no weapon. That was intentional. If I walked around carrying legendary gear, every assassin in the continent would visit me before breakfast. So I wore cheap clothes, carried an empty backpack, and accepted low-level quests. My first team consisted of Lysa, a healer who charged people extra if they complained, Garrick, a giant shield user who was afraid of insects, and Pip, a tiny wind mage who had been banned from 3 cities for experimental weather. They thought I was a summoner. Technically, that was true. They just thought I summoned one weapon at a time. Our first dungeon was supposed to contain goblins. It contained goblins. For 4 minutes. Then we found a staircase going down. The guild map said there was no staircase. Pip said, "That sounds dangerous." Garrick said, "We should report it." Lysa said, "There might be treasure." We went down. The lower floor was an ancient military vault. Thousands of years ago, some dead empire had stored experimental weapons there. I almost hugged the wall. The first chamber had spear traps. I touched one spear. Recorded. The second chamber had spinning blades. I waited for them to stop. Touched one. Recorded. The third room had a metal guardian with 4 arms and 4 swords. I shouted, "Do not destroy the swords." Garrick shouted, "Why?" Research. The guardian attacked. Garrick blocked. Lysa healed him. Pip blew dust into the guardian's joints. I crawled between its legs and slapped every sword. Recorded. The guardian looked down at me. I looked up at it. It kicked me through a wall. Worth it. Behind that wall was a sealed weapon chamber. Rows of black metal weapons covered the walls. The system began flashing warnings before I even touched them. Unknown forge signature. Ancient enchantment detected. Potential curse. Potential explosion. Potential soul damage. I said, "Interesting." Lysa grabbed my collar. No, I touched the first sword. It screamed. Not metaphorically. The sword literally screamed. Everyone covered their ears. The system called it Morning Fang. It grew stronger every time it heard someone regret a decision. I had 3 adventurers nearby. It became very strong. Then I touched a pair of chained daggers called Brother and Other Brother. Their enchantment forced both blades to argue with each other. One wanted to stab demons. The other wanted to open fruit. Then I found a cannon shaped like a dragon's head. I touched it. Skybreaker siege cannon recorded. My breathing stopped. A cannon. The system considered siege weapons valid. That changed everything. I summoned one. It appeared in the dungeon. It was much larger than I remembered. Its barrel smashed through 2 pillars. The ceiling cracked. Garrick said, "Ren, yes, dismiss it." Good idea. I dismissed it. The ceiling still collapsed. We ran. While escaping, we discovered the dungeon's true boss. A giant armored worm with a castle gate for a face burst through the floor. The guild later named it an Iron Maw Devourer. I named it Steve. Steve chased us through 6 chambers. Pip's magic barely slowed it. Garrick's shield attacks bounced off. Lysa threw healing potions at it because she had nothing else. I could have used the Sunblade. I could have used Dawn Needle. But if I revealed a national treasure inside a copper rank dungeon, our questions would multiply faster than Steve. So I summoned the Skybreaker siege cannon. Just one. The others stared. I said, Found it upstairs. Nobody believed me. Steve opened its metal mouth. The cannon fired. The dungeon became very quiet. Then the back half of Steve disappeared. So did 3 walls. So did a section of mountain. For 2 days, the guild thought a dragon had attacked the region. We were promoted to silver rank. That should have made my life easier. Instead, the guild began assigning us harder quests. Harder quests meant stronger monsters. Stronger monsters meant better weapons. I was delighted. 1 month later, we entered a haunted armory where every weapon was possessed. I touched all of them. For the next week, my hidden inventory whispered at night. 2 months later, we hunted a bandit lord who owned 12 magic weapons. I captured him alive because I needed him to explain where he bought them. 3 months later, we found a giant statue holding a sword the size of a bridge. I climbed the statue for 6 hours just to touch the blade. The system recorded it. When I later summoned the sword, I discovered I could choose where it appeared. That was new. Until then, I had summoned weapons close to my body, but the giant sword was too large. The system automatically opened a glowing portal in the air and pushed the blade through. I stared at the portal. Then I summoned another giant sword above an empty field. Another portal opened. Then another. Then 10. Then 100. The sky filled with circular gates. Garrick slowly sat down. Pip whispered, "That seems bad." I looked up at the 100 giant swords hanging above us. "That seems amazing." Lysa hit me with her staff. After that, I practiced portal summoning in secret. I learned that I could open the portals anywhere within roughly 2 kilometers. I could summon weapons pointing in any direction. I could make them fall, launch them, spin them, stack them, create walls, create bridges, create stairs. Once, when we needed to cross a canyon, I built a bridge from 12,000 copied spears. It worked perfectly until Garrick asked whether I had considered using rope. I had not. At gold rank, we received invitations to royal missions. That was where my collection became dangerous. Kings loved hiring adventurers to solve problems their armies could not. A sea serpent attacked merchant ships. We killed it. The captain of the Royal Navy let me inspect his enchanted harpoons. Recorded. A mountain giant occupied a fortress. We drove it out. The fortress commander owned a meteor iron axe. Recorded. A cult summoned a demon beneath a cathedral. We stopped the ritual. The high priest used a holy chain that could bind spirits. Recorded. Every mission made me stronger even when I did nothing. Sometimes I only needed a handshake with the right person while they were holding a weapon. I became extremely friendly. People thought I was polite. I was actually collecting their equipment. The funniest part was that most legendary weapon owners loved talking about their weapons. A knight would say, "This spear has belonged to my family for 9 generations. I would say, "May I see it?" He would say, "Of course." Recorded. A noble would say, "No commoner has ever touched this sword." I would say, "That's fascinating." Then I would trip. Then I would grab the sword for balance. Recorded. A priest would say, "Only the pure of heart may approach this sacred mace." I would say, "I'm probably fine." I was not fine. The mace electrocuted me for 3 minutes. Still recorded. By the time I was 20, my hidden inventory had more than 80,000 entries. I had common weapons, rare weapons, legendary weapons, cursed weapons, siege weapons, monster weapons, ancient weapons, weapons that technically should not have existed. I had a flute that summoned razor wind. I had an umbrella that fired lightning. I had a pair of boots used by an assassin who kicked people to death. The system classified both boots as weapons. I could summon endless left boots if I wanted. I did not know why I would want that. Then I met Duke Octavian Morholt, and suddenly endless boots seemed reasonable. Morholt was the kingdom's greatest private collector of legendary artifacts. He owned an entire mountain because he needed somewhere to store them. He invited adventurers to his estate once a year. Officially, it was a banquet. Unofficially, it was 300 rich people bragging about objects. I got invited after killing a frost wyvern. I wore my best coat. It still had a tear in the sleeve. Lysa told me not to steal anything. I said, "I never steal." She stared at me. I corrected myself. I never removed the original. She said that was worse somehow. Morholt greeted me personally. He was short, round, cheerful, and protected by enough guards to invade a small nation. "Ren Arclight," he said. "I hear you appreciate weapons." I almost laughed. You could say that. He showed me his gallery. It was beautiful. And by beautiful, I mean I nearly fainted. The walls held relics from extinct empires. A sword that burned blue when demons were near. A spear made from leviathan bone. A bow with a string of phoenix tendon. Twin axes forged inside a volcano. A black cube that Morholt insisted was a weapon even though nobody knew how to use it. I touched the cube. The system said, "Unfolding fortress armament recorded." I quietly put it back. Morholt noticed my expression. Interesting, isn't it? isn't it? Yes. Nobody has activated it in 400 years. I nodded. Inside my inventory, I summoned a copy mentally. A new message appeared. Activation authority recognized. I almost swallowed my tongue. Morholt kept walking. I followed him while sweating. At dinner, he showed everyone his greatest treasure, a silver spear called Heaven's Nail. According to legend, it had once pinned a flying dragon to a cloud. Morholt did not let anyone touch it. Not kings. Not generals. Not priests. Nobody. He kept it inside a transparent barrier. I wanted it more than I had ever wanted anything. Then assassins attacked. 30 masked killers crashed through the windows. People screamed. Guards drew swords. Morholt shouted for someone to protect Heaven's Nail. I protected it, very aggressively. An assassin threw a bomb. The barrier cracked. I jumped forward, grabbed the spear, and rolled behind a pillar. Recorded. The assassin came after me. I summoned a banquet fork. He laughed. Then I summoned 3,000 forks. He stopped laughing. The forks filled the air like silver rain. I did not stab him. I pinned his clothes to the wall. His pants were attached to a painting. His sleeve was attached to a roast pig. His mask was attached to the ceiling. He looked ridiculous. Then another assassin pulled a magic crossbow. I summoned a copy of his own crossbow. He froze. How? I fired first. The bolt hit his weapon and shattered it. He stared at the empty space in his hands. I said, "Nice crossbow." That night, we captured 26 assassins. 3 escaped. 1 escaped without pants. Morholt thanked me for saving his life. Then he looked at Heaven's Nail. Then he looked at my hand. I thought I was finished. Instead, he smiled. "You touched it." I said nothing. He leaned closer. "Can you reproduce it?" I said, "No." He continued staring. I said, "Probably." His smile became terrifying. Morholt was the first powerful person who understood my blessing and did not immediately think about war. He thought about profit. We became partners. He let me touch weapons in his collection. I gave him copies for research, not unlimited copies. I was greedy, not insane. Together, we discovered more rules. My summoned weapons were perfect snapshots. If I touched a sword while it was charged with magic, the copy appeared charged. If I touched a bow with a magical arrow loaded, the summoned copy included the arrow. If a weapon transformed, I could record each form separately. If a weapon had a spirit, the copied weapon usually had an echo of that spirit. That last rule caused problems. I copied a legendary talking sword named Sir Valiant. The original was proud, noble, and very loud. The copy was also proud, noble, and very loud. Then I summoned 10 copies. All 10 began arguing over which was the authentic Sir Valiant. Then I summoned 100. The room became a political crisis. Morholt banned me from copying intelligent weapons indoors. I accepted this rule until he left the room. Then I summoned 2 more. A year later, the continent changed. The Valdran Empire crossed the northern border. Valdran soldiers wore black armor and carried rune weapons fueled by monster cores. Their emperor, Darius Varkas, had conquered 5 nations in 12 years. His greatest general was his older sister, Seraphine Varkas, known as the Iron Widow. She had never lost a battle. More importantly, she carried 6 legendary weapons. I wanted to meet her immediately. Everyone told me this was not a normal reaction. The war spread fast. Cities fell. Fortresses burned. Refugees flooded south. The royal army began recruiting every high-rank adventurer. I was now platinum rank. I still pretended my blessing was weapon summoning. Technically correct. People assumed I had 20 or 30 weapons stored. Maybe 50. Only Lysa, Garrick, Pip, Celine, and Morholt knew the truth. And even they did not know the exact number. Neither did I. My inventory counter stopped displaying individual digits after 100,000. It just said, many. That felt rude. Our first battle against Valdran troops happened near Darren Pass. 5,000 Imperial soldiers marched through a canyon. Our side had 2,000. The commander asked me what I could contribute. I said, "Depends. How much do you value the canyon?" He said, "Very much." I said, "Then maybe less than usual." The battle started at sunrise. Valdran archers fired black arrows. I touched 1 arrow after Garrick blocked it. Recorded. The arrow had an enchantment that exploded when it touched stone. Interesting. I summoned 1, then 10, then 1,000. Pip looked at me. I smiled. He looked at the enemy. Then he smiled. I opened portals behind the Valdran formation. 1,000 of their own explosive arrows appeared facing backward. Their commander shouted, "Impossible." I fired. The canyon became very loud. We won in 11 minutes. The royal commander called it a miracle. Garrick called it excessive. I called it ammunition testing. After Darren Pass, rumors spread. People said a mysterious arsenal mage could copy imperial weapons. Valdran officers were ordered not to let me touch anything. That order lasted 4 days. Because battles are full of weapons. They flew through the air. They broke. They got dropped. They landed next to me. One enemy knight tried to stop me by coating his sword in poison. I wore gloves. Recorded. Another used a chain weapon so I could not get close. I summoned a longer chain. Another carried a spear that teleported back to his hand after being thrown. I let him throw it at me. Garrick blocked it. I touched it before it returned. Then I summoned 50 copies. All 50 tried to teleport back to the original owner. He screamed as spears began appearing around him from every direction. We stopped summoning after his helmet flew off. He retired from military service. The war should have terrified me. Sometimes it did, but my ability had one absurd advantage. Every enemy weapon used against me could become mine. The stronger the enemy, the better my reward. This created a strange situation where enemy generals tried to hide their best weapons from me. One commander entered battle using a broom. I respected the strategy. Then he hit one of my soldiers with it. My system said, "Combat broom recorded." I copied it. He looked betrayed by reality. Still, the Empire kept advancing because Seraphine Varkas finally entered the war. She appeared at Fort Halden wearing black armor with silver lines. Her 6 legendary weapons floated behind her like a crown. The first was Ashen Crown, a sword that burned anything it cut. The second was Northwind, a spear that controlled ice. The third was Gravebell, a hammer that weakened magic. The fourth was Red Thread, a chain blade that followed heartbeats. The fifth was Kingmaker, a bow whose arrows ignored armor. The sixth was a small white dagger called Last Silence. Nobody knew what Last Silence did because everyone hit by it died. I wanted all 6. The royal commander begged me not to say that aloud. Seraphine attacked Fort Halden alone. Not with an army. Alone. She stood before the gate. Then she swung Gravebell. Every defensive spell around the fortress shut off. She fired Kingmaker. The arrow passed through 3 walls and destroyed the command room. She threw Northwind. Ice spread across the ground and froze the moat. Then she walked forward while 10,000 Imperial soldiers charged behind her. That woman was basically an army carrying a smaller army. I met her on the wall. She looked up. I looked down. She raised Kingmaker. I raised a frying pan. Her arrow hit the pan. The pan exploded. I summoned another. She fired again. Another pan exploded. I summoned 50. The soldiers around me began backing away. Seraphine stared. I shouted, "How many arrows do you have?" She said nothing. I shouted, "I have more pans." She fired 6 arrows at once. I opened 6 portals and dropped 6 world anchor shields. Gravity bent. The arrows crashed into the ground. Seraphine's eyes narrowed. She recognized the shields. World anchor belonged to the royal treasury. That was bad. Then she drew Ashen Crown. That was good. She jumped onto the wall. We fought. I used Silver Mercy. She cut it in half. I summoned another. She cut that one too. I summoned 2. She shattered both. I summoned 20. She burned them. I summoned 100. For the first time, her expression changed. "Your copies are endless." I smiled. "Not endless." She relaxed slightly. I added, "I get bored eventually." She attacked harder. Ashen Crown carved through stone. Northwind froze my weapons mid-air. Gravebell disrupted my portals. Red Thread chased me across the wall. I was losing, and I was delighted, because every time her weapons came close, I tried to touch them. I slapped Northwind. Recorded. I grabbed Red Thread for half a second. Recorded. I blocked Gravebell with my forearm. Painful. Recorded. I caught a Kingmaker arrow with World Anchor, then touched the arrowhead. Recorded. Ashen Crown was harder. Every time I got close, my sleeve caught fire. Last Silence was worse because she had not used it. Then Seraphine made a mistake. She kicked me. Normally, getting kicked by an enemy general is bad, but her armored boot had blades attached. My system flashed. Widow Step Combat Grieve recorded. I smiled while flying backward. She noticed. "What did you just do?" I summoned a copy of her boot in my hand. She stared. I stared. It was awkward. I threw the boot at her. She looked offended enough to kill me. Then Pip created a tornado inside the fortress. Not outside. Inside. He claimed it was tactical. It removed half the roof. The sudden wind knocked Seraphine sideways. I lunged. She drew Last Silence. The white dagger flashed toward my neck. I raised my hand. The blade stopped 1 finger from my skin. Because I grabbed the flat side. The system chimed. Last Silence recorded. Seraphine froze. I froze. The dagger whispered. Target concept acquired. I had no idea what that meant. Then the fortress wall exploded beneath us. We both fell. She landed on an Imperial Wyvern. I landed in a hay cart. By the time I climbed out, Seraphine was retreating. Fort Halden survived. Barely. I had all 6 weapons. That night, I tested them. Ashen Crown burned exactly like the original. Northwind froze a lake. Gravebell shut down nearby magic. Red Thread tracked heartbeats. Kingmaker pierced enchanted armor. Then I summoned Last Silence. Morholt, who had arrived with the royal supply caravan, immediately moved behind 3 walls. Lysa refused to enter the room. Garrick put on 2 helmets. Pip volunteered to test it. We ignored Pip. I held the white dagger. A message appeared. Last silence cuts designated functions. I stared. Functions? I pointed it at a candle and thought, burning. I cut the air. The candle flame remained visible, but it stopped producing heat. I pointed it at a bell and thought, sound. I cut. The bell became silent. I pointed it at a locked door and thought, locked. I cut. The lock opened by itself. Pip whispered, that is not a dagger. I said, everything is a dagger if you are irresponsible enough. Lysa hit me. Last silence could cut concepts. Not anything. Not yet. The stronger the concept, the more resistance I felt. But I could cut simple properties. Heat, sound, wait for a few seconds, momentum, a spell's connection to its caster. I tried cutting taxes. Nothing happened. I tried twice. Still nothing. Some evils were beyond human power. After Fort Halden, the Empire became obsessed with me. Seraphine reported my ability directly to Emperor Darius. The Emperor placed a reward on my head. 10 million gold, a title, a province, and a private castle. For one brief moment, I considered turning myself in. Lysa said she would kill me first. Assassins began appearing everywhere. One disguised himself as a baker. I knew he was fake because his bread was terrible. One hid inside my hotel bed. I slept on top of him for 6 hours without noticing. One challenged me openly using a legendary blade called Blood Psalm. That assassin was my favorite. I touched the sword before knocking him unconscious. Recorded. The Empire also sent artifact hunters to destroy weapons before I could reach them. That was annoying. So Morholt created a solution, a traveling weapon exhibition. He called it the Grand Continental Heritage Tour. It was supposedly a cultural project to preserve historical artifacts during wartime. Actually, it was a giant bait trap. Collectors brought weapons. Nobles brought weapons. Churches brought weapons. Foreign ambassadors brought weapons. Morholt offered insurance. I worked as security. Every artifact passed through my inspection table. Touch, recorded, touch, recorded, touch, recorded. For 3 straight months, I stood beside velvet ropes while the strongest weapons on the continent arrived one by one. The Holy Republic sent the 7 judgment spears. Recorded. The Desert Kingdom sent a curved blade that could summon sandstorms. Recorded. The Northern clans sent Frostfather, a giant axe made from glacier crystal. Recorded. A pirate queen arrived drunk and placed a cannon on the table. Recorded. A monk brought a wooden stick. I almost ignored it. Then the system said, heaven-beating staff. I touched it. Recorded. The monk smiled like he knew exactly what I was doing. He whispered, try not to hit the moon. I laughed. He did not. I made a note. Then came the strangest exhibit. A small mountain kingdom sent a sealed jar. The label read, captured scream of the first banshee. I asked, how is this a weapon? The ambassador said, open it. I did not. I touched the jar. The system recorded it. Good enough. Another collector brought a mirror that reflected attacks. Recorded. Another brought a cursed crown that fired lasers from the wearer's eyes. Technically, the crown itself was the weapon. Recorded. Another brought an enchanted violin used by a battlefield bard. Recorded. When I summoned the copy and played one note, 300 soldiers outside the building suddenly felt motivated to invade something. We stopped testing it. My inventory grew absurd. I had so many legendary weapons that choosing one in combat became the hard part. So I developed categories. Close combat, long range, siege, anti-magic, anti-undead, anti-dragon, anti-army, anti-city. Things Morholt told me never to summon indoors. Things Lysa told me never to summon anywhere. Things Pip specifically wanted me to summon. That last category was the most dangerous. Then the Empire launched its largest attack. 200,000 soldiers crossed the border. They brought fortress walkers, floating warships, dragon cavalry, siege beasts, magic towers mounted on wheels. At the center was Emperor Darius himself. He had finally decided that if he could not capture me quietly, he would capture the entire country loudly. The royal army gathered at the plains of Marrow. We had 90,000 soldiers. The enemy had more than double. Our generals were terrified. I was nervous too. Not because of the army, because Emperor Darius carried a weapon I had never touched. It floated above his throne. A black sword surrounded by rings of red light. Celine recognized it from an ancient manuscript. The Dominion Blade, she whispered. According to legend, it could command other weapons. That was extremely bad for a man whose entire personality had become owns too many weapons. The Emperor raised the Dominion Blade. Every sword on our side shook. Then they ripped themselves out of their owner's hands and flew toward him. Spears followed, axes, bows, shields. Thousands of weapons rose into the sky. Our army became unarmed in seconds. The Emperor laughed. His voice carried through magic across the entire battlefield. Ren Arclight, your blessing is mine. I looked around. Soldiers stared at their empty hands. Garrick still had his shield because he was sitting on it. Lysa held her staff with both hands and insulted it until it stayed. Pip had no weapon. He looked excited anyway. The Emperor pointed Dominion Blade at me. Summon your arsenal. I did. One sword, The weapon immediately flew toward him. He smiled. I summoned 10. They flew toward him. 100. Same result. 1,000. The sky filled with weapons, all dragged toward the Emperor by Dominion Blade. He laughed louder. Our generals looked doomed. I scratched my head. Then I understood the weakness. Dominion Blade could command weapons, but command was not the same as ownership. I opened 10,000 portals behind the Emperor. He turned. Too late. I summoned 10,000 copies of his Dominion Blade. The battlefield went silent. Every copy tried to command every other copy. The magical field collapsed into complete confusion. Swords stopped in midair. Spears began spinning. Axes flew sideways. One Imperial officer lost his helmet. The Emperor's smile disappeared. I summoned another 10,000 Dominion Blades. Now even I had no idea what was happening. The sky looked like a meeting where 20,000 kings were shouting contradictory orders. The original Dominion Blade vibrated in the Emperor's hand. Then it exploded. He stared at the broken hilt. I raised one of my copies. Good sword. The battle began. I opened portals across the clouds. Not hundreds, not thousands, tens of thousands. Silver circles spread across the sky from horizon to horizon. Behind each portal waited a weapon. Sunblades, thunder hammers, skybreaker cannons, kingmaker bows, heaven's nails, frost axes, holy spears, dragon cleavers, siege chains, meteor swords. The enemy soldiers stopped charging. Some dropped their weapons. Some prayed. One man took out a notebook and started writing a will. I fired, not at the soldiers, at their machines. 1,000 skybreaker cannons erased the fortress walkers. Lightning hammers fell around the floating warships. Holy chains wrapped the siege beasts. World anchor shields dropped onto the ground and increased gravity until dragon cavalry crashed gently into fields like confused chickens. The Desert Kingdom's storm blades summoned a sandstorm behind enemy lines. The banshee jars opened in the sky. The captured screams hit the Imperial communication towers. Every crystal shattered. The battlefield became complete nonsense. I was having the best day of my life. Then Emperor Darius activated his second relic. Of course he had a second relic. A golden crown appeared over his head. A barrier expanded outward. Every summoned weapon inside the barrier vanished. My portals closed. The sky cleared. The Emperor stood in the center of silence. Selene shouted from behind me, "Sanctuary crown. It rejects foreign magic constructs." I tried summoning Silver Mercy. It disappeared. Sunblade, gone. World anchor, gone. Frying pan, gone. I looked offended. The Emperor laughed. "You are nothing without your arsenal." I held up my hands. "That is technically true." He charged. I ran. There is no shame in running from an emperor carrying a giant black sword, especially when he has 40,000 soldiers behind him. The sanctuary crown created a moving zone around him where my copies could not exist, so I could not attack him with summoned weapons. I could still attack everything outside the barrier. I opened portals at the edge. Spears shot toward him. They vanished when they crossed the field. Arrows, gone. Cannon fire, dispersed. Then I remembered last silence. The dagger cut functions, but the copy would vanish inside the barrier. So I needed the original. Problem. The original belonged to Seraphine. She was currently on the opposite side of the battlefield. Bigger problem. She was riding a dragon. I called Pip. He appeared upside down in a gust of wind. Need something ridiculous? Yes. His eyes lit up. I pointed at Seraphine. I need her dagger. Pip looked across 2 armies, 3 burning siege towers, a collapsing warship, and 1 dragon. Easy. It was not easy. Pip created a wind tunnel. Garrick used his shield as a sled. Lysa got on because she had stopped questioning us. I climbed on last. Pip launched us. We crossed the battlefield at a speed no shield should ever experience. Garrick screamed the entire way. Lysa laughed. I may have screamed too. We hit a siege ramp, flew into the air, and landed on the back of Seraphine's dragon. She looked over her shoulder. "Ren?" I said. "Hello." The dragon rolled. We almost died. Garrick grabbed a spike. Lysa grabbed Garrick. I grabbed Seraphine. Seraphine punched me. I grabbed her belt. She punched me again. I shouted, "I need last silence." She shouted, "Why would I give you my dagger? Your brother is using a crown that blocks my copies. That sounds like your problem. He plans to sacrifice your army after the battle." She stopped. I did not know if that was true. I was guessing, but Emperor Darius had the personality of a man who would sacrifice an army if it made his chair more comfortable. Seraphine looked toward the Emperor. At that exact moment, Darius activated a giant magic circle beneath his own soldiers. Hundreds collapsed as their mana was drained into the sanctuary crown. Seraphine's face went cold. Sometimes being lucky looks exactly like being clever. She pulled last silence from her belt and threw it to me. I caught it. The system did not need to record it. I needed the real one. The dagger felt different, heavier, sharper, alive. I jumped off the dragon. Bad idea. I was hundreds of meters above the ground. Pip caught me with wind. Better. He threw me toward Darius. Worse, I flew straight into the sanctuary field. All my summoned armor disappeared. My emergency boots vanished. The sword I had been holding disappeared. I entered the Emperor's barrier with nothing but the real last silence and a lot of bad decisions. Darius swung. I ducked. The ground behind me split. He attacked again. I rolled. My coat lost a sleeve. I liked that coat. I got angry. He raised the crown's power. Magic pressed down on my body. I could barely move. He walked toward me. You collected the weapons of kings. I backed away. You copied the relics of nations. Another step. You turned history into toys. That part was fair. He raised his sword. But you never understood what makes a weapon legendary. I looked at last silence. Then at the sanctuary crown. Then I smiled. You're right. He hesitated. I continued. It's the stories people tell after someone does something stupid with it. I swung last silence at the air. I did not target the crown. I targeted its function. Reject summons. The dagger hit invisible resistance. My arm shook. The blade screamed. Darius realized what I was doing. He lunged. I pushed harder. The concept snapped. The barrier shattered. My portals reopened all at once. 20,000 legendary weapons appeared around the Emperor. He stopped moving. I said, now this will be a good story. He surrendered. No, I am joking. He absolutely did not surrender. He screamed and activated a third relic. At that point, I became personally offended. The ground opened. A giant black fortress rose from beneath the battlefield. It had been buried there before the war. The entire invasion was a setup. The plains of Mara were the resting place of an ancient weapon called the Imperial Engine. The fortress unfolded into a mechanical giant taller than mountains. Its arms were covered in cannons. Its chest contained a glowing red core. Its head wore a crown of rotating blades. Every soldier on both sides stopped fighting. The mechanical giant stepped forward. The earthquake knocked everyone down. I looked up. My system displayed a message. Weapon detected. I laughed. Lysa, standing 50 meters away, shouted, "Do not." I started running toward it. Ren, if it is a weapon, I can record it. It is a walking fortress. Still counts. The Imperial Engine fired. A beam of red light crossed the battlefield. I summoned world anchor shields in layers. 100, 500, 2,000. The beam destroyed almost all of them. The last shield survived. Barely. I opened portals beneath the enemy. Not to attack. To build. Giant swords appeared flat like steps. Spears formed ramps. Shields became platforms. I created a staircase into the sky. Then I ran upward. Darius stared like I had lost my mind. He was correct. The Imperial Engine swung one enormous arm. I summoned the giant statue sword I had recorded years ago. Then another. Then 50. The giant swords blocked the arm for 3 seconds. I only needed 2. I jumped onto the machine's shoulder. Metal plates opened. Defense golems poured out. I touched the first golem's spear while dodging. Recorded. I touched another's shield. Recorded. I touched a cannon barrel. The system chimed. Imperial Engine shoulder cannon. Recorded. My heart stopped. Part of the fortress counted separately. I grinned. The cannon fired. I nearly died. Still worth it. I ran across the giant's shoulder while touching everything. Blades, cannons, launchers, magic conductors, rotating spike wheels. One mechanism was literally labeled Emergency Dragon Launcher. I had questions. No time. Recorded. The machine tried to crush me with its own hand. I jumped. Pip caught me with wind again. He had become very good at preventing the consequences of my decisions. I summoned a copy of the Imperial Engine shoulder cannon in the air. It was enormous. I summoned 10, then 100. The mechanical giant looked up. If a machine could regret being built, that one did. I fired. Its left arm disappeared. The Emperor screamed. Apparently, he was connected to it. Good information. The giant's chest opened. A red core pulsed inside. Celine shouted through a communication crystal. That is the command heart. Destroy it. I prepared Dawn Needle. Then I stopped. Destroying the heart would destroy the weapon. I had not touched the heart. I shouted back. Can we capture it instead? Everyone on the communication line yelled, no. I ignored them. I jumped onto a flying shield. That is exactly what it sounds like. I summoned hundreds of shields beneath my feet one after another, each appearing slightly higher than the last. I ran on them through the air. The Imperial Engine fired everything. Cannons, lasers, missiles, exploding chains, a cloud of metal birds that turned into knives. I wanted to touch those too. Focus, Ren. I used mirror relics to reflect lasers. World anchors bent missiles downward. Northwind froze cannon barrels. The heaven-beating staff knocked an entire chain attack away with one swing. The monk's warning returned to me. Try not to hit the moon. I started to understand why. The staff did not care how large something was. It cared how hard I wanted it to move. I hit the Imperial Engine in the face. The mountain-sized machine staggered backward. The moon was probably safe for now. I reached the open chest. The command heart was a floating sphere surrounded by blades. I lunged. Darius appeared in front of me. He had teleported through the machine. His armor was burning. His eyes glowed red. He looked less like an emperor and more like a man who had not slept since conquering his third country. You will not take this from me. I said, I am not taking it. He attacked. I am copying it. That made him angrier. We fought inside the giant. He used the machine's power directly. I used whatever I could summon outside the anti-copy pulses. Every few seconds, the fortress disrupted my inventory. So I fought with weapons in bursts. Sword, gone. Hammer, gone. Spear, gone. Frying pan, gone. Another frying pan. Darius stared. Why do you keep using that? Emotional value, he slashed. I blocked with the Red Fang Tavern veteran brick. The brick shattered. I felt genuine sadness. Then I summoned 3,000 more outside the anti-copy zone and dropped them through a maintenance shaft. Darius looked up. Bricks fell. The Emperor of Valdran was buried beneath the copied legacy of 7 tavern fights. History is beautiful. I reached the command heart, touched it. The world went silent. My blue system window turned black. Letters appeared slowly. Imperial engine recorded. Then another line. Scale exceeds safe summoning threshold. I frowned. A third line appeared. Threshold ignored. I smiled. Outside, every portal in the sky turned black. A copy of the Imperial engine began emerging above the battlefield. People screamed on both sides. Lysa found me through the communication crystal. Ren, yes? Why is there another mountain robot in the sky? Testing. You are banned from testing. The copied Imperial engine dropped. I positioned it horizontally. It landed on the original. The impact created a crater visible from neighboring countries. I dismissed the copy 1 second before it crushed our army too. The original machine stopped moving. Darius crawled out of the wreckage. Seraphine landed beside him. She pointed last silence at his throat. The war ended that afternoon. At least, that was what everyone thought. The empire fractured. Generals surrendered. Occupied kingdoms rebelled. Darius was imprisoned beneath the capital. Seraphine refused the throne. People started calling me the Infinite Arsenal. I preferred it to Warehouse. Then the political problems began. Every kingdom wanted to know what I had copied. The royal family wanted a list. The church wanted an audit. Collectors wanted licensing agreements. Foreign ambassadors demanded that copies of their national treasures be returned. I explained that the copies were magical constructs and not stolen property. They explained that this did not make them feel better. One king accused me of violating international law. I asked which law. He said they were writing it. Morholt found that hilarious. The first new law was called the Arclight Artifact Replication Restriction. It was 98 pages long. I did not read it. Lysa did. Then she hit me with the document. Apparently, I violated it while she was reading it. For a few months, things became peaceful. I took small adventurer jobs again. Rat nests, escort missions, lost pets. I once used 3 legendary spears to rescue a cat from a tree. The cat scratched me. I considered recording the claws. The system did not count them because they were part of the cat. Reasonable. Then one day, a letter arrived. No seal, no name, just one sentence. You have been collecting weapons that do not belong to your world. I showed it to Morholt. He stopped smiling. That was terrifying because Morholt smiled when assassins attacked dinner. He took me beneath his mountain estate to a hidden vault I had never seen. I felt betrayed. You had another vault? Focus. Inside was one weapon, a broken sword. Half the blade was missing. The remaining metal looked like black glass filled with stars. I had never seen anything like it. Morholt said his family found it 300 years ago inside a crater. Nobody could identify the material. Nobody could damage it. Nobody could activate it. He had kept it secret because every scholar who studied it eventually had the same nightmare. A door opening in the sky, a hand reaching through, and a voice asking for something back. I stared at the sword. You know I am going to touch it. I know. Then why show me? Because the letter used the same phrase my grandfather wrote in his journal. What phrase? Not of this world. That was enough. I touched the broken blade. My system vanished. Not dimmed. Not blocked. Gone. For the first time since I was 8, there was nothing in front of me. Then a different interface appeared. Red letters. Foreign armament detected. Origin. Unavailable. Owner. Active. Replication prohibited. I blinked. Replication prohibited? My blessing had never said no before. I tried summoning the broken sword. Nothing happened. I tried again. Nothing. Then the red interface changed. Attempt logged. Morholt slowly stepped backward. What did you do? I tried to copy it, and it said no. He looked relieved. Then another line appeared. Owner notified. We both stopped moving. A sound came from above. Not thunder. Not magic. Something deeper, like the sky itself had cracked. We ran outside. Everyone on the mountain was looking up. A thin black line stretched across the clouds. It widened. Stars appeared behind it. Not the stars of our sky. These were too bright, too close. A giant hand made of silver armor emerged through the opening. It was larger than the Imperial engine. Then a voice echoed across the continent. Who touched my sword? I raised one finger. Morholt slapped my hand down. The hand opened. Inside its palm floated thousands of weapons, not swords and spears, things I could not name. Rings that bent space, cubes covered in eyes, cannons made from bone, blades shaped like pieces of night, a bow with a string connected to a star. My fear lasted roughly 3 seconds. Then my collector instinct woke up. I whispered, I need to touch those. Morholt grabbed my shoulders. No! The giant hand pointed toward me. A spear of white light launched from the sky. I opened portals. World anchors stacked. The spear shattered them. I used mirror shields. They cracked. I used the heaven-beating staff. The impact knocked me through 3 buildings. When I stood up, I was laughing. Not because it was funny, because the system had returned. And it had displayed one beautiful message. Contact registered. The white spear had touched my staff for less than a second. That counted. Foreign weapon fragment recorded. I tried summoning it. The red interface flashed. Replication prohibited. Then my normal blue interface appeared over it. User authority conflict. Red text. Replication prohibited. Blue text. Weapon recorded. Red. Denied. Blue. Recorded. The 2 windows began arguing. I had never felt more proud. Then the blue window changed. Searching loophole. I nearly cried. The system was learning from me. A final message appeared. Replication of complete foreign armament prohibited. Another line. Replication of incomplete foreign armament, not prohibited. I looked at the shattered fragment of white spear beside me. I touched it. Recorded. I summoned the fragment. It worked, so I summoned 1,000 fragments. The alien voice went silent. I arranged the fragments in the air like a giant puzzle. Each piece connected. A complete spear formed. The red interface exploded with warning messages. I ignored them. The giant hand in the sky pulled back slightly. I threw the spear. The sky cracked wider. The weapon pierced the silver armor. For the first time, something on the other side reacted with pain. Then the entire portal slammed shut. Silence covered the mountain. Morholt looked at me. I looked at him. He said, "We are all going to die." I said, "Probably." Then the broken black sword in his vault began floating. The missing half of the blade formed from red light. My system flashed. Foreign armament state changed. Complete weapon now present. Touch requirement previously satisfied. New form recorded. I summoned it. The complete star-filled sword appeared in my hand. Morholt sat down. I swung it lightly. A black line appeared in the air. Space opened. Through the cut, I saw somewhere else. A city floating upside down in a violet sky. Creatures in silver armor turned toward me. I immediately closed the cut. Morholt stared. "Did you just cut open another world?" "Maybe." "Do not do that again." I did it again. This time, I opened a tiny cut, just enough to look through. On the other side was an enormous hall filled with weapon racks. Millions of weapons. Maybe billions. My mouth went dry. Then a silver-armored figure stepped into view. He had 6 eyes, 4 arms, and he was carrying enough weapons to make my collection look like a kitchen drawer. He saw me. I closed the cut. Morholt asked, "What did you see?" I whispered, "Competition." For the next week, nothing happened. That made me more nervous than an invasion. Kings argued about the sky portal. Priests declared it a divine warning. Scholars called it dimensional contact. Pip called it the coolest thing ever. Lysa prepared emergency medical supplies. Garrick built a bunker. Seraphine visited me without warning. She had become commander of a peacekeeping coalition. She entered Morholt's estate, dropped 6 weapons onto a table, and said, "Take these." I stared. Her legendary weapons. The originals. "You are giving them to me? I am lending them." Why? Because if giant hands are coming through the sky, I would rather the idiot with infinite copies be on my side. That was almost touching. Then she punched me in the shoulder. Still touching. The world prepared for invasion. I prepared differently. I visited every weapon shop I had missed. Every museum. Every fortress. Every old battlefield. Every private collection willing to open its doors. Some people refused. Then the sky cracked again. They stopped refusing. I traveled across the continent for 6 months collecting everything. The Eastern Empire let me touch the Dragon Throne sword. The Southern Islands showed me 7 storm cannons. The Dwarven Kingdoms opened vaults sealed for 1,000 years. I touched axes that could split mountains, hammers that created earthquakes, crossbows that fired bolts through shadows. A Dwarven chef made me touch a meat cleaver after learning my ability. I asked why. He said, "Family heirloom." Recorded. The elves were more difficult. Their queen refused to let me touch the branch of First Dawn, a living bow grown from the oldest tree in the world. Then demons attacked their forest. I summoned 10,000 water spears and put out the fires. She let me touch the bow. Recorded. The demons carried weapons too. Recorded. One demon used a sword made from solid hatred. I touched it. My inventory felt angry for 2 days. Another carried a staff that summoned mouths. I did not ask. Recorded. The beast tribes had no traditional weapons. They used claws and horns. Those were body parts, so I could not copy them. Then one warrior removed a ceremonial horn cap designed for headbutting. The system accepted it. I became the proud owner of infinite headbutting helmets. I used them exactly once. It was enough. Eventually, the sky opened again. Not one crack. 12. Across the world. Silver-armored soldiers descended from every portal. They did not march. They floated. Each carried impossible weapons. Cities panicked. Armies gathered. I watched the first invasion force descend above the capital. Their commander had 6 eyes, 4 arms, and a familiar collection of weapons, the same one I had seen through the dimensional cut. He pointed at me. A translation spell echoed his words. Thief of the archive. I looked around. Everyone nearby looked at me. I pointed at myself. Me? Yes, that seems dramatic. You have replicated protected armaments belonging to the Celestial Archive. I nodded slowly. Counterpoint. I touched them. The commander's 6 eyes narrowed. That is not ownership. I never said it was. Return all unauthorized copies. I looked at my inventory, then at him. How? He paused. That was a good question. I continued. They are not stored physically. They are patterns. He looked annoyed. Delete the patterns. No. Why? Collection value. Behind me, Lysa covered her face. The commander raised all 4 weapons. I opened 4 portals. Copies of those exact weapons appeared. The commander froze. I smiled. Nice equipment. He attacked. The battle for the capital became the most ridiculous fight I had ever experienced. He fired a beam that erased stone. I summoned a copy and fired back. He created a gravity cube. I copied it. He released a swarm of metal insects. I slapped one as it flew past. Recorded. Suddenly I had infinite metal insects. He looked horrified. I released 2 swarms, then 20, then 10,000. The sky turned silver. His soldiers tried to control their constructs. Mine had no loyalty. They simply followed my commands. For 3 hours, the capital watched 2 armies of tiny metal insects fight above the palace. The insects eventually became confused and started building a giant nest around a clock tower. We moved on. The commander used a weapon shaped like a ring. It created a circular portal that redirected attacks. I copied the ring. Then I created 2 portals facing each other and threw a rock inside. The rock fell forever. Pip saw it. His eyes widened. I knew that expression. No. What if we put a cannon in the loop? No. What if we accelerate a cannonball for 10 minutes and then release it? I stared at him. He stared at me. 10 minutes later, the alien command ship lost half its hull. Science. The commander screamed something that did not translate politely. He summoned a giant armored beast. I summoned the Imperial engine. The beast bit the machine. The machine punched the beast. People evacuated 3 districts. Then I remembered the copied emergency dragon launcher. I had never tested it. I summoned one on the Imperial engine's shoulder. The mechanism loaded. A magical dragon appeared inside the launcher. I had so many questions. It fired the dragon. The dragon screamed. The armored beast screamed. I screamed because nobody had warned me the dragon was alive. The 2 creatures collided. Pip shouted, "Again!" I dismissed the launcher. Some knowledge is too dangerous. Eventually, the Celestial Commander retreated, but he left a warning. The Celestial Archive was not an army. It was a library. Those soldiers were only guards, and I had broken one of their oldest laws. No world outside their authority was allowed to reproduce archive-class weapons. If I refused to surrender my blessing, they would send an archivist. I asked what an archivist was. The commander said, "Someone who has never failed to recover stolen weapons." Then he vanished. I looked at Seraphine. She looked at me. Garrick asked, "Can we move to another continent?" Morholt said, "They opened 12 portals. I do not think geography matters." Pip raised his hand. "I vote we steal more weapons before the archivist arrives." Everyone stared at him. I raised my hand too. The vote failed. We prepared anyway. Days passed. Then weeks. No attack. I became suspicious. The Celestial Archive had called me a thief, but my ability did not steal. It copied. Why would a civilization capable of crossing worlds care so much about copies? Morholt and I studied the broken star sword. Celine examined ancient legends. Seraphine interrogated captured celestial soldiers. Lysa threatened people until they answered questions. Eventually, we found something. The foreign weapons did not simply contain enchantments. They contained laws, tiny pieces of rules from other worlds. Gravity, distance, heat, memory, direction. Some weapons could cut those rules. Others could replace them. If I copied enough foreign weapons, I was not just building an arsenal. I was collecting pieces of reality. That explained the panic. It also made me want to collect more. I have flaws. Then Celine discovered an older text beneath the royal library. It mentioned a power called the Vault Hand, a blessing given once every age to a keeper of echoes. The keeper could record tools of violence. The text ended with one sentence. When the keeper's collection becomes complete, the final vault opens. Nobody knew what that meant. I had a guess. It meant trouble. I was correct. One night, my system updated. No warning. No ritual. I was eating soup. A window appeared. Milestone reached. Recorded armaments. 1 million. I dropped my spoon. Morholt looked up. What? I showed him the window. He went pale. Another message appeared. Hidden inventory expansion complete. Duplicate restriction removed. I stared. What duplicate restriction? Morholt stared too. I had already been summoning absurd numbers of copies. Then the system explained. Until that moment, I had been summoning temporary replicas. Now I could create persistent copies. Weapons that would remain even if I slept, even if I traveled away, even if I died. Morholt whispered. Ren. I said. I know. Do not test that. I summoned a kitchen knife. The first one. Rusty. Bent tip. Terrible sharpness. It landed on the table. I waited. Nothing happened. I dismissed it mentally. It stayed. I tried again. Still there. The copy was permanent. My father's old kitchen knife had just become more dangerous than any economic system on the continent, because if permanent copies worked for it, they worked for everything. Gold could not be copied, but gold swords could. Dragonbone could not be copied, but dragonbone spears could. Rare materials had just stopped being rare, if they could be shaped into weapons before I touched them. Morholt sat down. We cannot tell anyone. A knock sounded at the door. Pip entered. Tell anyone what? Morholt and I shouted, nothing. Pip saw the duplicate knife. He picked it up. Why is this still here? We were doomed. For 3 months, we tried to keep the new ability secret. This was difficult because Pip kept suggesting businesses, infinite farming tools, infinite construction axes, infinite defensive shields, infinite enchanted heaters that happened to count as weapons because they could burn people. He had ideas. Some were even good. The world was recovering from war, so I quietly helped. I created permanent bridge chains, permanent tools for mines, permanent monster defense ballistae, permanent enchanted blades for surgeons. That last one required careful legal language. We started changing the economy without telling anyone why. Then someone noticed identical legendary metal appearing in 5 countries. Merchants investigated. Nobles panicked. Kings called meetings. The church called it a miracle. Dwarves called it market manipulation. They were not wrong. Before the political explosion could begin, every weapon in my hidden inventory started vibrating. I felt it. 1 million recorded patterns humming at the same time. The sky turned white. Not bright, white, like someone erased the color. A woman appeared above the capital. She wore no armor, carried no visible weapon, had long black hair and a simple gray coat. She looked ordinary. That scared me more than the giant hand. The celestial soldiers around the world immediately knelt. The woman looked down at me. Ren Arclight. Her voice was quiet. Everyone heard it. I stepped forward. Archivist? Yes. Do you have a name? Idra. Nice to meet you. It will not be fair. She descended. No portal. No wings. Space simply placed her in front of me. Seraphine drew Ashen Crown. Garrick raised his shield. Lysa prepared healing magic. Pip prepared something that made the weather nervous. Idra ignored them. She looked at my empty hands. You carry 1,234,911 recorded weapons. I blinked. Wait, you know the exact number? Yes. Can you tell my system? It just says many. She did not smile. I tried. Idra held out one hand. Release the vault hand. I do not know how. You will. How? When I remove it from your soul. Everyone attacked at once. Seraphine swung. Pip unleashed a lightning cyclone. Garrick charged. Lysa fired holy chains. I opened 1,000 portals. Idra lifted one finger. Everything stopped. Not time. Weapons. Every object my system considered a weapon froze. Ashen Crown stopped. Garrick's shield stopped. The holy chains stopped. My summoned relics stopped. Even Pip's lightning stopped because apparently he had shaped it with enough violent intent for my blessing to classify it as a weapon. That was interesting. Idra walked through the frozen battlefield. You misunderstand the archive. She touched one of my summoned sunblades. It vanished. Not dismissed. Deleted. The pattern vanished from my inventory too. My stomach dropped. She touched World Anchor. Gone. Heaven's Nail. Gone. Northwind. Gone. One by one, legendary weapons disappeared from my collection. For the first time in my life, someone was taking them away permanently. I became furious. I summoned 10,000 junk weapons behind her. She froze them. I summoned siege cannons. Frozen. I summoned the Imperial Engine. It appeared above the city and froze halfway through a portal. Idra did not even look up. You have quantity. She touched another weapon. Gone. You do not have authority. That word bothered me. Authority. My system had mentioned it before. When I copied foreign weapons. When the red interface fought the blue one. When the Imperial Engine ignored its safety threshold. Maybe my blessing was not just storage. Maybe it was arguing with something. I looked at last silence. The summoned copy was frozen. The original was still in Seraphine's hand. Frozen too. Because it was a weapon, Idra could control anything recognized as a weapon. So I needed something that was not a weapon. I looked around. Table, chair, wall, soup spoon. My eyes stopped. Spoon. I picked it up. Idra looked at me. The spoon moved. It had never been used as a weapon. The system had never recorded it. So her authority ignored it. I ran at her with a spoon. She looked genuinely confused. I swung. She caught my wrist. You are attacking me with cutlery. Yes, that is not a weapon. It is now. The spoon hit her forehead. My system chimed. Improvised weapon detected. Spoon recorded. Idra's ability instantly froze it. Too late. I had learned the rule. Her power acted on classification after my system recognized an object as a weapon. There was a tiny moment before that happened. A fraction of a second. Ridiculous. Dangerous. Enough. I grabbed a chair. Swung. Before the system recorded it, it moved normally. Idra blocked. Chair recorded. Frozen. I kicked a table. Recorded. Frozen. I threw a plate. Recorded. Frozen. Soon the palace courtyard was filled with furniture stopped in midair. Idra looked increasingly annoyed. I was losing expensive household items at a heroic rate. Then Pip understood. He picked up a loaf of bread. Ren. I looked at him. He grinned. I grinned. Lysa shouted, "Do not encourage him." Too late. Pip threw the bread at Idra. She ignored it. The loaf hit her shoulder. The system flashed. Improvised projectile weapon recorded. Frozen. Garrick threw a boot. Seraphine threw a cup. Lysa refused. Then Idra deleted her healing staff. Lysa threw the entire soup pot. The courtyard became a food fight against an interdimensional god. Idra finally stepped back. I grabbed the one thing nobody expected. Morholt. He screamed. I lifted him. The system remained silent. Human beings did not count as weapons. Good. Ren. Sorry. Do not. I threw him. Idra caught him automatically. Morholt yelled something about inheritance law. While her hands were occupied, I lunged and touched her sleeve. Nothing. Not a weapon. Then I touched a thin metal ring on her finger. The system exploded. Archive key recorded. Idra's expression changed for the first time. She dropped Morholt. He landed on me. Pain. Worth it. Idra looked at her ring, then at me. No. I summoned a copy. The ring appeared. It did not freeze. Her authority did not recognize it as a weapon. My system did. Interesting. The blue window said, Archive key. Then another description appeared. Administrative tool, not a weapon, but my blessing had recorded it. That should have been impossible, unless the ring could be used as a weapon in a way I did not understand. I put it on. Every frozen weapon began glowing. Idra moved instantly. For the first time, she panicked. She reached for my hand. I activated the ring. The world disappeared. I was suddenly standing inside my hidden inventory. I had never entered it before. It was not a menu. It was a place. An endless black space filled with weapons. Millions. Rows and rows stretching beyond sight. Every sword I had touched. Every spear. Every bow. Every ridiculous tavern brick. Every legendary relic. Every cursed blade. Every alien fragment. Copies hung in the dark like stars. But there was something else. At the center stood a door. A massive white door covered in chains. The same symbol as the archive key was carved into it. Idra appeared behind me. She looked furious. You should not be here. I turned. My inventory? This is not your inventory. That sentence changed everything. She pointed around us. This is a sealed annex of the Celestial Archive. I stared at the endless weapons. No. Yes. My blessing records weapons here. Your blessing is a stolen access function. I slowly looked at my hands. She continued. Thousands of years ago, one of our archivists rebelled. He created the Vault Hand to copy protected armaments from the archive into mortal worlds. The function was sealed. The user line was supposed to end, but it didn't. No. Why? Idra looked toward the chained white door. Because someone reopened it. The chains began shaking. Not good. I asked. What is behind that? The original collection. My mouth went dry. What do you mean, original? Everything you have recorded exists in this annex as a pattern. She pointed at the door. Behind that door are weapons collected before your world had a name. I felt my collector instinct rise. Idra saw my face. Do not. I did not say anything. You did not need to. The door shook again. One chain snapped. A voice came from behind it. Not the giant silver hand. Something older. Something amused. Keeper. Idra went pale. I had not known she could do that. The voice continued. At last. Another chain broke. Idra grabbed my arm. We are leaving. I resisted. Who is that? The reason the archive exists. That answer was not useful. The door cracked open. Golden light poured through. For 1 second I saw inside. I saw a spear longer than a continent. A blade wrapped around a star. A hammer chained to a dead universe. A tiny needle floating inside a glass case labeled with symbols. My system translated as, do not touch. I wanted to touch it. I wanted to touch all of them. Idra slapped me. Focus. The door opened another centimeter. Something on the other side laughed. Then my system displayed a message I had never seen. Original owner nearby. My skin turned cold. Owner of what? My blessing? The vault? The weapons? Before I could ask, Idra tore the archive key from my finger. The hidden space collapsed. I woke in the palace courtyard. Only 1 second had passed. Everyone was still throwing food. The Imperial engine was still frozen above the city. Morholt was on the ground swearing. Idra stood in front of me, breathing hard. Then every portal in the sky reopened. Not 12, thousands. Across the entire horizon. The Celestial Army returned. But they were not facing us. They were facing the portals, as if they were defending our world from whatever was coming through. Idra looked upward. This is your fault. I thought about arguing. Then the white door appeared in the sky. It was bigger than the capital, chains wrapped around it. One chain broke, then another, then another. The voice from beyond echoed across the world. Ren Arclight. Everyone stared at me. I sighed. I was getting used to that. Bring me my weapons. The door began opening. Behind me, my hidden inventory unlocked itself. Every weapon I had ever recorded became available at once. Not one category, not one page. Everything. Millions of portals formed behind me in the sky. Ordinary swords, rusty knives, tavern bricks, legendary spears, holy hammers, alien cannons, world-cutting blades. Permanent copies began falling into formation. Across the battlefield, kings watched duplicates of their national treasures appear. Knights stared as copies of the swords in their own hands emerged from my portals. Seraphine looked down at Ashen Crown, then up at the 10,000 Ashen Crowns floating behind me. She slowly lowered her weapon. That is disturbing. You get used to it. No, I do not think I will. The celestial soldiers raised their weapons. I copied those too. They looked offended. The giant white door opened wider. A shadow moved behind it. Bigger than a city. Bigger than the Imperial engine. My system began flashing faster than I could read. Unknown armament detected. Unknown armament detected. Unknown armament detected. Touch requirement pending. I smiled. Lisa saw the smile. Ren. Yes. Whatever you are thinking, make it less stupid. I looked at the impossible arsenal descending from another reality. I looked at the millions of weapons floating behind me. I looked at the silver-armored archivist who had come to erase my power and was now standing beside us because something worse had arrived. Then I summoned the first weapon I ever recorded. A rusty kitchen knife with a bent tip. I held it in one hand. Idra stared. That is what you choose? No. I opened a portal the size of a mountain. Behind it waited the copied Imperial engine, 100,000 skybreaker cannons, 10,000 heaven's nails, 7,000 world anchors, every legendary weapon from every kingdom I had visited, 3 million explosive arrows, 20,000 arguing survaliant swords, 1 million headbutting helmets, the Red Fang Tavern's veteran brick multiplied beyond good judgment, and enough frying pans to make every chef on the continent feel a disturbance in the universe. I pointed the rusty knife at the opening door. This is what I choose. The shadow behind the door laughed. Something reached through. My system chimed. New weapon touched. And that was when I realized the war over my arsenal had not even started yet.